Hey everyone, Olga here from Indie Film World. Today I'm doing something a little bit different. I'll be interviewing on Skype with Bri Castellini, who is a filmmaker from New York. She's also the Stareable.com community director and she hosts their podcast called Forget the Box. So if you're a web series creator or you want to be creating a web series, I recommend you head over to that website and join the forum. It's got so many really cool articles and tips and just a community that they've built, all web series creators. So I'm just going to jump straight into it and I'm sure she will share some good tips.
Hi, Bri.
Hello.
Thank you so much for talking to me today and for taking up your evening over there in your New York.
New York, yes. No,
Yeah,
thank you for
yeah,
having me.
yeah, of course. So tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do.
Sure. So my name is Bri Castellini. I am the community director and podcast host for Stareable, which is an audience building platform for web series creators. So what that means, like on practical terms, is that obviously I host our podcast. I kind of handle all of our communication and education resources. So I write for our blog, podcast, third plug. It's called Forget the Box. I do our podcast. I do like webinars. I do interviews like this. I do meetups and in-person workshops and classes at film festivals and things like that. I, run our social media. I write a lot of our emails. So I'm kind of just the talky and the education-y person on staff. And at night, when I'm not doing interviews or doing meetups for Stareable, I'm also an independent filmmaker myself. I'm a writer director primarily, though I also produce and act a decent amount. And I've got 2 web series that I've created and written under my belt as alongside a series of series that I have produced instead rather than written or whatever. I have 1 short film out and then a new web series season and a new short film, both in post-production currently. So very busy.
Yeah, that's amazing. How do you have time to do all of that?
I do not.
Yeah, so that's how we met through Stareable, which if anyone who's making a web series, you need to know about this website and the podcast, which is just amazing. I listen to it on the way to work as soon as it comes out, and they're really, really good. Now, you've written a few articles, and I've picked a few that I wanted to talk to you about. But before
Great.
all of that, I wanted to ask, you've obviously seen a whole heap of web series. What do you think, if
hmm
you had to narrow it down to one main thing, what do you think is the most important thing that makes a successful web series? Very generally.
I no, I got you. I actually had to answer this question a couple weeks ago in another interview I was doing, and I think what I came up with is the thing that makes a successful web series is one that knows what it is. And what I mean by that is that a lot of people, especially when they are coming to web series from other forms of media, or it's their first time ever making anything, they try to make like a mini TV show, which
Mm,
at our budget level just isn't a feasible thing. And what you end up doing is just competing with mainstream television and movies, which I don't think is the right move. Because when you're making an independent series, you're inherently going to be limited. And even if you make something gorgeous, you're still limited by the fact that you have no, massive studio backing or whatever. So I think that the best web series are the ones that recognize that they're web series and they aren't embarrassed by that. And they really embrace the budget, the restrictions, the medium of being on the web and having the ability to be interactive and a little bit more malleable to audience members and things like that. And I think that's really what defines it for me.
yeah, great. So the first article that I wanted to talk about was the one that's called "What is the goal of your web series?" An important
Yep.
first step, I think, before starting. Kind of touches a little bit on what you just said, but
Mhm.
yeah, talk to us about that.
Yeah. So this comes from really a lot. I get a lot of filmmakers who email me and ask for advice because I write so many of these articles. Actually, I recently hit my 100th article for Stareable mark, which is very
Whoa.
bizarre and exciting. So I write a lot. I'm very prolific, and people are always asking me like, how do I get an agent? How do I do this? How do I do that? And it becomes very clear that, despite the fact that their web series was made with $500 over the course of a couple of weekends, they're expecting it to be, the next Broad City. And they want to gain a massive online audience so that they can start a Patreon or do a Kickstarter. But they also want to sell to TV. They also want to, get their first feature film directing job out of it. They want an agent off of this. They want to get into all the film festivals. They want to do too many things. And, obviously this is especially crazy when it's your first project, but even if it's your second or third, that's not a realistic thing to do to yourself, especially when your budget is so limited. And the fact of the matter is that all those things that you want, each one requires very different sort of elements to be feasible for somebody who's just basically doing it themselves. And that, that's not a limiting factor of whoever's doing it. I certainly can't do it all. I don't have the money. None of us do. So we kind of really have to decide what the point of making our projects is. And with that in mind, what things we need to sacrifice and what things we need to prioritize to actually accomplish those goals. Because setting off and wanting to, have your cake and eat it too, it's just going to make you feel upset, and it's going to make you feel unproductive and unsuccessful. And I don't think that that is a, productive use of anyone's time. I think that if you have, the entire sun and stars as your scope, then you're just setting yourself up for failure and disappointment. And I don't think that's fair. I think there's a lot of really great stuff that, if it is targeted to what it's going for, is going to make people really happy and eventually get them to where they want to go. But trying to go for everything at once, I think, is just a fool's errand. So this article, I sort of broke down the various sort of most common goals that people have when they go about making a web series, and then sort of breaking down what for each of these goals you should prioritize and which things that you can, feel comfortable sacrificing in order to get to that goal and not, go completely broke in the process.
So what are some examples of those types of goals?
So obviously the big one is gain an online audience. All of us want to go viral. All of us want, troves of adoring fans that'll, subscribe to our Patreons and donate to our Kickstarters and, really root for us and retweet all of our very clever Twitter jokes at 2 a.m. Everybody wants that. So in my opinion, I think that the priority for that is story. Obviously, people need something to get attached to. Multiple episodes, which I think is important because you need sort of the runway to find that audience. It's hard to gain an audience for a single episode, but if you have, say, 10 weeks of episodes coming out, that's 10 weeks of time that you have to sort of build momentum and start gaining an audience and start gaining traction. You have enough time with the amount of content that you've made to start to get people interested. Marketing obviously is a huge part of that. So you got to prioritize marketing because, you can't just put it on YouTube and hope that people find it because you tagged it LGBT. That's not how the internet works anymore. There's just too much content. So you really do need to prioritize marketing and not just paying for Facebook ads, but actually thinking about a marketing plan if you want an online audience and that's your goal. And also base competency. I define base competency in the article as the most basic, sound, picture, story, and acting, I think is roughly how I do it. Basically, it needs to look good enough that the production quality isn't distracting, because it's fine if you don't have Game of Thrones level production quality, but if your sound is really scratchy or the video is badly lit or the actors are kind of weak, then that's going to be distracting for people. And regardless of how good your marketing and your story is, it's going to be hard for an audience to get into. Audiences tend not to, be very forgiving of that because they have so many other options for content these days. So you have to have at least base competency in order to convince people to watch your show. Then I put as a sacrifice is I think you should sacrifice long episodes and multiple locations because obviously those are pretty expensive. And if you want the multiple episodes that you need to market off of and get your runway going, you're just not going to have the budget for that unless you're crazy independently wealthy, which we're going into this conversation assuming you're not. Large casts, I definitely always recommend people cut characters if they're really looking to gain an online audience, because the more people you have, the longer your production process is going to be, the more expensive it's going to be, probably the longer the episodes are going to be, and that's just a terrifying prospect that is not going to work out well for anybody. And also sacrifice quick results, because even if you have 10 episodes and you're going to air them once a week, so you have 10 weeks to sort of roll out your series and get people excited, that 10 weeks isn't the only amount of time that you're marketing. You should not only be marketing at least a month or two in advance, probably much, much earlier if you're really doing it right. But you're also going to end up marketing even after that. You're going to try and have probably a film festival run, which will extend your marketing. You might find a distributor somewhere in there, or you might release some extra content, something like that. And building an audience doesn't happen overnight. Even the viral success stories still take quite a long time to get discovered in most cases. And also you can never count on viral success. So if you're really dedicated to building an online audience, it's not going to happen fast. It's going to take a lot of work and a lot of focus on this particular project and the marketing of it for that to be feasible for you. So I think people need to recognize that up front before just like uploading their passion project to the internet and just closing their eyes and hoping real hard.
Yeah.
Well, the other goals that I mentioned in this article, which I pulled up because you mentioned it, sell concept to TV, showcase a skill set for future employment, make money, increase representation, tell a story you couldn't tell any other way, and finish a project. So those are sort of the ones that I go through. I mean, I can talk about them in more specifics, but a good sort of counter to the audience one that I just talked about is the goal of selling your concept to TV, which is a pretty big goal, especially for your first or second project without any sort of connections. But if that is the thing that you want to do, if you specifically think that this idea that you have is worth being on TV right now, no adaptation needed, I would prioritize the pilot, because obviously you need something visual to showcase that this story has legs, a season screenplay or at least outline so you have an idea of where it's going to go, and then film festivals. So when you're trying to sell to TV, in most cases, it's not going to be a viral success that can, makes people want to do that. Or if that is your goal from the start, viral success is going to be a really hard thing to get to. And as I already mentioned, building an audience is a lot of work. So if you already know the target, it doesn't matter that everyone has seen your project. It just matters if the right people have seen it. And in general, the best path, especially if you have no connections right now, in getting your content seen by decision makers and by people who might have connections further up the chain, film festivals are really the best bet for that. There's plenty of festivals that cater for specifically for television and pilots and things like that. And so that would be sort of my recommendation is don't worry about building the mass audience. That if it comes, that's great, but you can certainly sacrifice marketing. You can certainly sacrifice runway. You just need one really great pilot to convince people that the writing is strong, the concept is strong, and that you're the one that should be attached. And also you can probably sacrifice like any sort of interactive elements, because it can't be interactive on TV. And if your goal is to sell to TV, there's no need for that. That's not really a part of that development process. So don't waste your time on that.
Yeah. So I'll put a link to the article at the end of this. So I guess, because I get asked a lot, and I guess the question people want to know before they make their web series, should I make the whole thing and then put it out? Should I just make a pilot? Or so I guess it depends on your goals and what
I
you're
mean,
hoping to achieve.
Exactly. And that happens in so many cases. Like people always ask me for advice on exactly the same thing. Should I just put out a pilot? Should I crowdfund first? Should I crowdfund second? Should I release all but one episode? All these things. And it's like, it really just depends. Like for me and my goals are, showcasing talent and slowly building an audience. So that's what I'm focused on. That's all of my efforts. So I don't put as much priority on film festivals. I don't travel to them. I tend not to shell out the big bucks unless I think I have a really good shot at it. And, I don't put a lot of time and effort into that side of things. But for people who are like, I want this specific thing, I'm like, well, your path is going to be totally different. So don't look to me as a model, just look to the people who you're actually hoping to follow in the footsteps of, and look to them as a model, and be really realistic with yourself about what you are looking to get out of this. Because if you just want to tell a story, that's fine. That's a totally legitimate goal, totally valid. And I love people who just want to make something for the art of it. And, if success comes, great. But I think that, that there's nothing wrong with that, especially if it's your first project or even your second or third. Like, just tell a story. If you're in this to get rich, you should probably do something else. So I just hope you love the project, and, maybe we can work on those other goals later on.
So you come from a writing background, yes? Yeah.
I do.
How did you learn filmmaking?
Completely by accident. So I was a prose writer for most of my life, actually, all the way through my senior year of college. It was between my junior and senior year, I think, or maybe between my sophomore and junior. It was late in college when I started listening to the Nerdist Writers Panel podcast, which is just a panel of TV writers talking about like the shows that they work on and their path into the industry. And I just really liked the podcast because I love television. And as I was listening, I was like, oh, this is the kind of writing I want to do. I don't want to do prose at all because I always hated writing like the action and the descriptions. I'm like, they're in a room, in a place. Here's the conversation. And I was like, oh, I've just been trying to write scripts, but doing it in prose and badly. So I finished out college, but started applying to graduate programs in TV writing specifically, got into the one that I applied to in New York, moved to New York, did a 2-year MFA in writing and producing for television, which was fine, but not exactly what I was looking for in terms of training and in terms of structure. So I kind of just started making stuff up by myself. Then we had to make a pilot. We had to produce a web series pilot for one of my classes to, talk about short form television writing. And my show and 2 or 3 other classmates' shows, we decided to keep going on as sort of a collective group of classmates. And I just sort of fell into it from there. I produced the first season of my web series and a friend of mine's web series in a single summer. We put them on the internet. We started submitting to film festivals. And from then on, I couldn't stop. It was so much fun and so terrifying, but so rewarding in a way that nothing had ever been rewarding before.
Yeah.
And, every successive day on set, I learned something new. Every time something went wrong, I learned something new. Every time I accidentally did something right, I learned something new. It was sort of just it's something I wouldn't recommend in terms of the way to get into filmmaking, because I sort of just started doing it. And I really would have benefited from reading articles that I now write and things like that, but I didn't at all. I was just like, so we've got a camera, we've got actors, and we've got a script. That's it, right? That's all we need. Yeah. And we just sort of bowled through it. Luckily, it was, all mostly amongst friends. So there was no professional people like, who the hell are all of these idiot 20-somethings and what am I doing with my life? So we got very lucky that we had the space to have a learning curve because everyone else was learning as well. But that's really how I learned filmmaking, is that one summer where we produced 2 web series to completion amongst a myriad of problems, because
did you release any of them?
Yeah, we released both of the ones that we shot to completion. There was another one that we were producing with somebody who worked with us on our other 2, but that fell apart for a couple of reasons. But the 2 that we finished, the ones that we finished filming to the completion of, we released. So that was the first season of Brains, which is my first web series, and the season of Relativity, which is a time travel web series I produced for my good friend and now collaborator on my latest web series, Chris Cherry.
Awesome. Oh, what's the latest one?
Yeah, the latest show, the one that has its 2nd season in post-production right now, is called Sam and Pat Are Depressed. So I created it technically, but it's based on my friendship with my good friend Chris Cherry. So we co-star, and now in season 2, we both produced, and he wrote a couple episodes for it. It's about 2 roommates who do observational comedy about therapy in between kind of absurdist sight gags and escalating insanity of these 2 sort of very strange roommates talking about therapy. But yeah, it's a mental health comedy. Very, very simple, very structured. Each episode is about a different concept of therapy that has, struck one of them. So there's an episode called I think I'm Depressing My Therapist, which is the kind of the conversation that started the whole thing. My friend and I were roommates for 2 years, and there was a period of time where we both had therapy on the same day. He was pretty new to therapy. I was going back for the first time in a while, and we would just sort of, after both of our therapy sessions, we'd both come home, we'd sit on the couch, and we'd just sort of talk about therapy because it was just a thing that we had very specifically in common at the time. And he made a comment that he doesn't remember anymore, but he made this comment to me that he was worried that he was depressing his therapist because all of his stories that he was telling in therapy were so sad and had such rough endings. And I was like, that's the funniest concept I've ever heard, literally in my life. And then, a couple months later, I just thought it came to me, and I decided to write sort of a slightly heightened version of that conversation, which became the pilot. And then all of a sudden I had 8 more episodes, and we had a season of web series.
I've seen, I think 4 episodes, and it's really funny and it's really clever. And I really enjoyed the dialogue. It's simple because it's just 2 people in an apartment.
Yeah.
but
Yeah, and it's literally
it's
us.
really, yeah, it's really good. How long did it take you to write?
2 days. I
Okay.
wrote, yeah, I wrote the first, yeah, well, I mean, they're very short episodes. The first season,
Yeah.
especially, each episode is only about probably 4 pages of script, maybe 5, mostly 3 or 4 though. And they're all just a single conversation. And because the conversations are with characters who are literally just slightly more absurd versions of me and my friend who ended up co-starring with me, it's such an easy show to write, and it's such a delight because it's just what would Chris and I say to each other if we were a little bit meaner and a little bit worse of people?
Yeah.
That's it. All right, done. Like it literally, it's one of the easiest things I have ever written, possibly the easiest thing, because
Yeah.
it's so grounded in something that I'm so familiar with, but it's also so like silly to the sense that like I don't feel like I have to, make it gritty or real. It's like, no, I know exactly what these two people would say because we've had these sorts of conversations. It's just,
Yeah.
here's the theme, here are these two people, what do they have to say? And it all just sort of flows really naturally. And that first season, we didn't rewrite hardly at all. We maybe added 1 or 2 lines here and there to make things like have better continuity overall. But that first season, it kind of just, I wrote it in like a feverish 2 days, sent all of the
Yeah.
scripts to Chris and was like, hey, I think we need to make this show. Season 2 was considerably more complicated, twice as long. Chris was writing episodes and we decided to put more plot into it. But season 1 was this sort of bizarrely kismet experience where I wrote it in 2 days. We spent about a month in pre-production and then we shot it over 2 days as well.
And I love the endings of each one, how it all ends with food.
Yep.
But it's
I
so
mean,
real.
it's the most
Yeah.
classic roommate thing, right? It's like
Yeah.
after you've had a very long, sometimes very serious conversation, you both just look at each other and go, so it's time for dinner, right? Want to order food? And
Yeah.
that's just how we end each episode.
Yeah. So when will season 2 be out? Have you filmed it yet? I don't remember
Yeah,
what you just said.
we filmed it. It's in post-production.
Oh,
We
okay.
filmed it in early August, and it's because it's twice as long of a season as the first season, and we also upgraded our camera in between seasons. I actually physically don't have the storage right now to complete editing, so I ordered an external hard drive, and that's what kind of the waiting on is. But we're hoping early 2019. We're really, we really want to pull this together. It's a much more complicated season to put together, and just my poor little MacBook can't handle it.
Yeah.
So we gotta upgrade some of our systems before we can finish things.
I wanted to talk about developing a digital marketing strategy because I feel like a lot of
Okay.
people make something and then just
Mm-hmm.
YouTube,
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, watch
At
this.
that point,
And they
they're so
don't know,
exhausted by actually making it. They're
yeah, they
just
don't
like,
know what to
just
do.
have it. Here you go.
Yeah.
So I guess the first action is don't do that. You should start at least one social media, if not more than that, and definitely start building an email mailing list probably 6 months before you plan to release. So
So
if you
how
can,
do you get an email mailing list?
well, I mean, things like MailChimp make that super easy where you can just make a little landing page that you can send to people and they can sign up. You can also just manually make one where, if you go to conventions and get people's like business cards, or if you go to networking nights and get people's business cards or write things down, you can just sort of manually add them to like a spreadsheet where anytime you want to reach out to people, you can copy and paste their email addresses into a new compose. It's best if you can like organize it a little, like I met this person at a Starable networking event. I met this person at this film festival. That way you can sort of personalize it if you need to. That's always better. But email is pretty much across the board the most effective way to communicate with fans. And it's one of the more direct ways to actually get engagement. A lot of the crowdfunding platforms have done like research on this, and like they've found that it's, probably I don't have the actual numbers, but it's significantly higher in like turnaround from outreach to actually getting a donation on email versus social media. Social media maybe gets you like 10% return, if that, on like number of people who see your tweet and number of people who give you money. but in email, it's closer to like 30 or 40%. So having people's emails is super, super useful. And so I would recommend starting to collect those far before you plan on releasing your series. That way you have a set number of people who are already interested in watching your thing before it goes up. So you don't have to do quite as much legwork during and after your like production process, which is obviously going to be one of the hardest times of making your project. So that's action one, is start early and start just finding people however you can. I guess the second thing would be to have a sit down meeting with the people who you consider sort of like high up in your production team. So generally that's like producers, director, maybe DP, depending on sort of your team structure. But have a meeting with the people who are like the most invested in your project and really talk through like, listen, we're not just going to put this on YouTube and call it a day. Like if we want people to see this, we need to do this together. This is not a one person job. So given that, that we're all in this together, what is everybody comfortable doing with marketing? What do you think your strengths are? And what do you think your weaknesses are? And once you have that, you can start delegating. So like, obviously a lot of us end up just doing everything ourselves, but if you can have this meeting with your team and you can delegate even small things, even like this friend is good at Photoshop, so they're going to make all of our graphics, or this friend is great at Twitter, so they're just going to manage our Twitter account, things like that. Really like have a serious conversation with your team and start to delegate so that it doesn't feel so overwhelming that it's all on your shoulders. If you kind of pass it around a little bit, there's always going to be something that's getting updated and everyone inherently feels more like ownership over the project and more responsible for its outcome. And you don't feel so, stressed out and terrified every second that you haven't tweeted recently enough and, oh God, everyone's going to forget about you. So if you can collaborate, have a meeting and get that process started. That would, I guess, be my second action. That should also happen probably before you shoot, just to sort of set out expectations. But, whenever it has to happen, it has to happen. I think it's unfair when, especially, I've seen this a lot on the forums, especially where people will complain that like their cast and crew never retweet episodes, or like their other producer hasn't done enough legwork in promoting the series. And then you ask them a couple of questions and it becomes very obvious that like they've never had a conversation. They just sort of expected people to do these things. And while it is certainly frustrating when people who have like spent time making this thing with you and seemed excited about it don't seem so excited 6 months, 8 months later, that's not really their fault. Like it's not their project, you haven't involved them in any way. You haven't really kept them in the loop. Maybe you haven't spoken in a couple of months because you've been, heads down editing. But regardless, like they've moved on to probably 3 or 4 other projects since then, or they have school, or they have a job, and you never told them that there were specific expectations that you had for promoting the project. So if you can have an actual meeting with the people who you think are the most invested and the most important people to be promoting the work early, the less frustrating it's going to be for everyone, the clearer the expectations are going to be, and probably the more successful your marketing push is going to be because you have more than one person, posting about the content.
Yeah, that's a great tip, because maybe they just didn't know that was expected of them. They're frustrated about it, thinking I'm doing all the work, they're not doing anything, but they just didn't know. Yeah,
they didn't know. They have other priorities. They've got lots of other things going on. Like for you, your web series launching is like the biggest thing that's ever happened. Yeah. It's the most exciting thing. You're constantly refreshing YouTube to see how many likes you've gotten. But for these people, like it's a day at work.
Yeah.
They've got things to do. They've got other emails to send. They've got, they have to call their mom that night. Like they've got a lot of things going on that you have no idea about. And given that you didn't say like, hey, it would be great if you could do X, Y, and Z, or hey, this is sort of our strategy for marketing. Like, can you help out with that? Do you want to do an Instagram story about it? Do you want to do blah, 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 blah? Nothing.
Yeah.
I would say the third action to take would be to start thinking about supplementary content and like bonus content, which sounds like more work, but the sort of thing about it is that you're going to be marketing anyways, and marketing is going to take a ton of time and a ton of effort, and it's genuinely more fun to like market and be able to market content versus just sort of reminding people that you exist. That's never fun. It's never inspired. It's sort of just a slog that you just repeat like, hey, I exist. Please watch my web series. But supplementary content, making like a companion podcast or some interviews with your cast and crew, something simple like that, or a production diary even, that is going to be more fulfilling to make because you get to make it with your friends. You get to do something creative, but it also is just more content out there about your work. So, it's sort of tricking your brain into marketing because your brain thinks that you're just making more fun content, but in reality, you're marketing your web series. So if you can start thinking of like what things you want to make. If it's a production diary, start taking notes. If it is cast and crew interviews, write up some questions and schedule a time to see people. Doesn't have to be fancy, doesn't have to be a huge production. It can just be hanging out with a friend for 15 minutes, filming a couple of goofy question and answers, and then calling it a day. That's not going to take long to edit, and it's going to be great content. They're going to feel more comfortable sharing it because it's specifically about them, that kind of stuff. But it's far more fun to make a couple of short interviews with your friends to be able to put on Instagram every couple of days than it is to just like post a standard behind the scenes photo on Instagram and say, we made a web series, please watch it. If you can show a person being charismatic and funny and talking about their experiences, that's going to make you feel better because it's somebody else talking or it's something more creatively interesting to watch, but it's still going to, accomplish the same goal. People are going to know about your web series and you have successfully marketed it. But that's a much more fun way to do it and far more effective because people are actually getting to like see an example. It's very hard from like just a standard marketing tweet to get like the vibe and tone of a project. It's very, very rare that you can look at a show's Twitter account and say, I know what that show's about. Very rare. Happens, but it's very rare. But if the same Twitter account is putting out videos and fun cast and crew get to know you games and things like that, it becomes very much clear like who worked on this, why you as an audience member would be interested, and what you can expect from the project itself.
Awesome tips. Thank you.
Yeah, I think those are a good 3. I could mention so many more, but I think that's a good starting point just to get you thinking.
Thank you so much for your time and all your knowledge. So where can people find you online?
So you can find all of Starable's stuff. We are at Starable on every social media, though we're most commonly on Twitter. So it's STAREBLE, ABLE. Did I spell that right? Boy, oh boy, I should know how to spell our name. Yeah, Starable. Terrible stuff. The forum where you can read all the articles that we've been sort of talking about tonight, as well as just to access like networking to people all around the world. That's community.starable.com. Our catalog for web series is just starable.com. And then you can find me pretty much everywhere at Brizone World on social media, also mostly on Twitter, BRISOWNWORLD. I'm also very easy to Google. So if you just Google my name, you'll get like 8 pages of nonsense that I've done the past 15 years on the internet.
Yeah. Is Starable doing another festival next year?
We are. We are actually, spoiler alert, we are opening for submissions next week, actually. So I don't know when this is going up, but they will be opening in mid-December. So keep an eye out for that. And it'll be next year in July in New York City.
Okay, well, thank you again, and I look forward to seeing season 2.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.